All right, come on in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. tnholler.com is where you can find us at the TN Holler on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky. I think that's pretty much all of them. We also have hollers hollering all across the state. Thanks to your support. Really appreciate it. Chip in a couple bucks a month and get one of these sweet holler hats like the one I'm wearing. You can do that at tnholler.com. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it. We send out weekly emails with a wrap up of everything you might have missed. Also, shout out Abby Rubenfeld. Shout out Elisa Parker if you're buying or selling a home in Middle Tennessee. And we have a couple new sponsors. Gay Veterans and Gay Cowboys are supporting us now. You can check out their website on our website and in our wrap up. All right, so I wanted to come on here. I haven't been on here in a while because during session, it's hard for me to get on here. There's just so much going on. I'm running a million miles an hour just to keep up, generally trying to bring you whatever I can, missing a lot of stuff. But, you know, the streams become a little bit harder when session's happening. But as you may have seen, if you follow us, session is mercifully adjourned as of yesterday for the year. Legislative session in Tennessee goes from January to April. It's always a little, we're always a little unsure when they're going to get out, even right up until the last day. Even the legislators don't know when they're going to get out. Yesterday, they finally got out for the year. And I think there was some speculation that it was going to be before yesterday because, as some of you may have seen, former Speaker Glenn Cassidy's trial, his corruption trial, started yesterday. So people thought, oh, they're probably going to get out before that starts because there's like dozens of Republicans who have been subpoenaed to testify during the corruption trial of Glenn Cassidy. And that just started yesterday. I actually went down to the courthouse. I was there for the beginning of the jury selection process. I was there to hear the witness list read aloud. Notably, Cameron Sexton is on the witness list. So the Republican Speaker of the House currently is on the list of witnesses to testify, presumably against the former Republican Speaker of the House, Glenn Cassidy, and his Chief of Staff, Cade Cothran. Hi from Ohio. Julie says, yeah, please let me know where you guys are watching from. Appreciate it. We always appreciate people who are watching, especially when you're not even in Tennessee, that you're paying attention to what's going on here. As we always say, this is the tip of the spear. What's coming here is coming your way next. You say you haven't heard about the corruption trial. Well, I'm not going to speak specifically about that today. But yes, former Speaker Glenn Cassidy faces a federal corruption trial for basically a conspiracy to essentially grift money from state coffers by having his former chief of staff allegedly set up a vendor under a fake name called Phoenix, Matthew or Phoenix something, where they were becoming a vendor for, mailers and campaign materials that were used by the Republican caucus. And they're essentially accused by the federal government of using a fake name and setting up a conspiracy to do that. And one of the clips that I brought to show you today, this is a while back. This has been going on for years. So, this goes back to when Speaker Cassidy I think he had stepped down at that point and he was just a member and Sexton had already ascended, but the case was going on. And this was when I asked Speaker Cassidy at the time, or he wasn't a speaker anymore, but about Phoenix.
Hey Glenn, who's Matthew Phoenix?
What?
Who's Matthew Phoenix?
Don't know.
No idea, huh?
Sorry for the loud bell, but there he was saying don't know. But you can see the kind of guilty look on his face that he kind of did know. And that's been going on a while. So a lot of corruption, and it's going to trial finally. And there is speculation that it's going to have something to do with the way the vouchers were initially passed in Tennessee. If some of you may remember, when vouchers were initially passed in Memphis and Nashville, there was a tie vote. The board was held open for 45 minutes. which is never done. Usually call for a vote, they vote, it's over within 10 seconds. This was held open for 45 minutes because they were trying to wrangle one more vote. And allegedly, according to Republican or Democratic rep John Mark Windle, at the time he's in the National Guard, he was offered a military promotion to general in National Guard if he would vote for the vouchers. And as many have said, there's only one person that can really make that offer. That's the governor. So there is speculation that a lot of this stuff about Speaker Cassada was actually an effort to get him to roll on the governor and the bribery charge. And so it was reported yesterday that Speaker Cassada declined a plea deal. So it's now in trial. And when they read the charges, I was reminded that actually this is all about like $60,000, which is not a lot of money. And, doesn't make it okay, but it just goes to show like how petty this all kind of was on the part of the people that may have done it, as well as on the part of, the charges. And it feels like something else was going on. That's what it feels like. So I had noticed that private schools had amped up their contributions to Lee. Yeah. I mean, now ever since then, this past session, vouchers have expanded to all 95 counties. And as many have said, that means a lot of money that's going to private schools. Most of this is an effort to subsidize private school education, largely in religious schools, for people who are already in private schools. This is not about saving public school kids. This is about steering a lot of money into private hands. And that's what it's always been about. And that's what we've been sounding the alarm about for a long time. And the current program is now 20,000 scholarships, but you can bet your bottom dollar they are going to try to expand that. One thing that I wanted to say here, one thing that we saw happen this past session, and, the sort of the main focus of this session was this bill to try to remove undocumented kids from schools in Tennessee, but really across the country, because they were trying to get Plyler versus Doe or DOE overturned throughout the country to kick undocumented kids out of schools across the country. And that was a big fight this past session. A lot of groups and organizations stood up against it. There were rallies, there were protests at the Capitol. It passed the Senate, but it got hung up in the House. And it's worth noting that it didn't pass. And so it got put on hold. Notice it says put on hold. That's an important phrase because it could definitely come back next year. But for now, it's stalled out. And, celebrate the wins. The people who showed up, people who spoke out, the clergy, the school boards, the principals, the regular people, the moms, the teachers, all of you that stood up against this cruel bill to bully kids out of our schools across the country. You should be proud of yourselves. And, you did that even without the national spotlight, because we tried over and over again to get national attention on this bill, because they were openly saying that they were coming for overturning the Supreme Court verdict. Well, even without the national spotlight, which never really came, it stalled out. The pressure was there. You guys spoke up. You did a great job. And, the wins in Tennessee are not getting good bills passed. Unfortunately, the wins in Tennessee are stopping awful bills. And this was the biggest win of the session. And it doesn't come with a party. It doesn't come with a plaque. It doesn't come with a celebration. It doesn't come with a moment even, because what it comes with is they gavel out for the year and it didn't happen. And that's when it sinks in that, oh, the fight was won. So this is that moment, the fight was won. The bill was stopped for now. That means that there are kids who are going to go to school at least a little longer because people stood up and fought against it and put enough pressure on Tennessee Republicans that enough Tennessee Republicans realized it was the wrong thing to do. I mean, you had Republicans crying on the Senate floor about this bill. Todd Gardenhire wept. Democrats wept also, but for a Republican to be weeping on the floor, knowing how cruel the bill was, that says a lot. and it did pass the Senate anyway. Bo Watson got it passed. Maybe he'll, go run for Congress on that or something, some bullshit, but it didn't pass in the House. And even Jeremy Faison voted against it in committee. So that is a testament to the people who showed up and put pressure on them. And you should be extremely proud of yourselves for that. So that's a small win, as Lucy says, and something that you should be proud of. Let me know if you guys have anything else on your minds. I was just going to kind of talk about a couple of the other things that happened. Yesterday, we saw this anti-DEI bill on the House floor. And, Aaron Mayberry out of Clarksville had 2 anti-DEI bills come up this past week. The first one was passed without any questions asked because apparently, they just didn't want him to have to face questioning, which is pathetic. But Democrats insisted on the second one having some questioning. And so Aaron Mayberry, who is a freshman rep trying to stand in the well, had to stand in the well and take some pressure from, Black Democrats especially. And this was him facing Justin Jones yesterday.
We will continue to resist this attack to dismantle civil rights. This bill is shameful. You know it is. In 2019, an ETSU student was put on trial for showing up to a rally of Black students wearing a gorilla mask, carrying bananas, a rope, and a sack emblazoned with the Confederate flag. In 2024 at Austin Peay State University, a professor was hired accused of being affiliated with websites that promoted Nazism, racism, and hate group activity, required the university to rethink their hiring practices. In February 2024, Black students at Independence High School in Thompson Station were called the N-word and monkey. Also, there was threats made that all Black students should be shot. In 2021, in Jacksboro Middle School, a Black family had to move after their daughter Promise was called a monkey and circled by white boys, that she had to leave her city. In 2024, in Hawkins County, the Department of Justice had to intervene after the school district refused to address Monkey of the Month auction and mock slave auctions. Can you tell us, with all these cases that are not back in 1964, but that are current day, why do you want to dismantle diversity, equity, inclusion when our children are still not safe, when they're being terrorized by people who are racist like you?
So that was Justin Jones talking to Rep. Aaron Mayberry, who is also on the school board, by the way. And Clarksville folks are pushing for him to resign or be removed from the school board, saying that it's a conflict of interest. But that was intense and righteous and absolutely right. It wasn't just Justin too. There were others who spoke up. I have another one here. This was Pearson.
We have been tracking our way consistently to eroding the voices, the lives, the lived experiences of people who are not white in this body. And this is nothing new, despite the fact that the representative is new. It is a white lash. Look it up for those who don't know.
It is a white lash. And, I think the thing to take away from that, even though it passed, of course it did, party lines, every Republican voted for it. But we need to push back against that stuff. Like, they have this narrative in their mind about DEI and affirmative action. And as Rep. McKenzie says, we're not there yet. That was a powerful phrase that he kept using. But, that doesn't make it right. And, DEI, what it is specifically, is about making people feel more comfortable in the workplace. It's about righting some wrongs of the past. And, not all DEI is perfect. Even the people who were speaking up yesterday wouldn't say that. But what's obviously true is that it's part of a greater rollback of, efforts to, at least bring us forward from some deep wounds and deep wrongs in the past. And, what I was trying to ask these guys is, was DEI and affirmative action and things like that, were these ever necessary in their minds? Like, do they at least acknowledge that there was a time at one point when we needed to be intentional about progress racially, about progress for women, about progress for, in general? Do they acknowledge that there was a time? And so if there at least was a time, which I think everybody would acknowledge, there at least was one time when we needed to do that, when did that stop? That's my question for Aaron Mayberry. When did that time end? Because that's what I think Rep. McKenzie means by we're not there yet. And that's what I think Justin Jones is illustrating with all those examples of recent examples of deep, ugly racism in our schools here in Tennessee. And those are just a few examples. He could have gone on a lot longer, but he only had 1 minute. If there was a time where this was necessary, and I think most reasonable people would acknowledge that, yeah, there was a time when we had to be intentional about racial progress. When did that end? Because Rep. McKenzie's saying it didn't, and I'd have to agree with him because I don't remember that moment that happened. So when you're standing up there, Aaron Mayberry, with these anti-DEI bills, days after having taken a picture with Johnny Garrett holding a whip because you're the deputy whip, and, you know, either intentionally or unintentionally antagonizing and triggering Black Democrats, you are a living example of why these intentional efforts are needed. You are why we need DEI, Aaron Mayberry. And to further underscore the point, after you posted that whip picture with Johnny Garrett, who is attacking and killing the Human Rights Commission while pretending to be strengthening it, which is bullshit. After you did that, after you posted the picture of the whips, you were told by the Black Caucus, that's triggering, that hurts us. This is how we feel. And you didn't apologize. You did not care. It didn't bother you at all that you had just hurt the feelings of these people that you work with every day. So that right there tells you all you need to know. The fact that you would not apologize. You did not care about their feelings because you think your feelings are more important than theirs. You think your feelings are supreme to theirs. That is a form of white supremacy, Aaron Mayberry. Because you think what you think matters more than what they think. And as a Jew, if I was like, hey, I'm a Jew, that thing bothers me. And you were like, oh no, I decide it doesn't. You know, whether it be like a Jewish star that they were wearing for the, you know, the yellow star on the, about the COVID, remember that? Or whatever else. Like if somebody who's not Jewish was like, no, you don't get to tell me that that's offensive. You just don't give a shit. And so when they say these anti-DEI bills are racist, and when they call you racist, and when they say you're carrying on a tradition of white supremacy, like you're not doing yourself any favors by completely ignoring them when they tell you that those whip pictures were hurtful and not apologizing. You just proved their point. And so those were powerful speeches yesterday. The bill passed anyway. You know, what the long-term impact of those bills are is debatable. I don't actually know. I mean, Joe Towns at one point stood up and was like, honestly, these DEI efforts aren't totally helping anybody anyway. Maybe true. But the point is that the reason that you're rolling back DEI laws and the reason that you're killing the Human Rights Commission and the reason that you're attacking CRT, you know, this is all linked to an effort by white men across the country to reassert themselves, you know, because they feel victimized, because to them, equality is oppression. And it's not. There were a couple white guys that stood up yesterday, Powell and Freeman. You know, and I thought that was important too, because I think it's important for white guys to stand up and say, equality is not oppression. It just isn't. It just isn't. And that's honestly a really pessimistic view of the world, to think like, oh, if somebody else is getting something, that means I'm losing something. Definitely women as well. Yes. I hate how so many minorities and women have been fired by Trump for no reason. Yeah, for sure. For sure. It was the black reps that were standing up yesterday and making it about racism, but it's actually absolutely also about sexism and misogyny. 100%. And, a lot of people are going to lose opportunities. And this idea that, oh, what he's really doing is restoring a meritocracy. And, he even said to me that he's fighting discrimination for black people. He said this with a straight face, people. I posted the video. I mean, it's unbelievable. In his mind, he's a pastor. He might actually think that. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on in his little brain. But the idea that he's restoring meritocracy is just a joke. The idea that what we had before DEI and affirmative action was meritocracy, it's just nonsense. And as Rep. McKenzie pointed out, look at the caucus that he's standing in. It's 99% white, mostly male. And, that comes when you are not intentional about doing anything different. It's about intentionality. Being intentional about fighting discrimination is not discrimination. Just like, tolerating intolerance is not intolerance. Tolerating intolerance. Being intolerant of intolerance is not intolerance. That's what I'm trying to say. Allie Phillips, who is up there in Clarksville and knows Aaron Mayberry, says he's the GOP's newest puppet. It's embarrassing. He represents my county. That's about Aaron Mayberry. I actually got the sense that it was almost like he was being pranked by the more veteran senior Republicans. It kind of seemed like Jason Zachary was sort of enjoying watching Aaron Mayberry squirm on this. He was so bad at it too. That was the thing. He would get asked these questions and all he could do is, so he had these prepared talking points, this prepared speech for him, in his notes. And so anytime he was asked a question by any of the black Democrats, he would just read about DEI and what he thought he was doing. He couldn't have a conversation. There's no way that guy's a pastor. Is this guy really a pastor? No way. Pastors think on their feet. They're good speakers. He's none of those things. And it was really embarrassing to watch. It was hard to watch. But both bills passed. And that wasn't the only ugly bill that passed yesterday. There was another one by Rep. Chris Todd, who, man, is he a piece of work. And he had a bill that attacks churches and charities that help immigrants, which is just about the least imaginable Christian thing imaginable. Just about the least Christian thing imaginable. If you really look at the teachings of Jesus and what he had to say. And that's what John Ray Clemens stood up and pointed out.
The entire Bible's chock full, Old Testament, New Testament, help someone who needs helping. Your church does this, takes in anyone, gives them assistance, gives them food, gives them shelter. They're vulnerable, will be held liable under this bill. So by carrying out the word of Christ, the teachings of the Bible, and helping someone who needs help or assistance, you're going to court. You're going to be your church is going to be dissolved. Your priest, your minister, your pastor getting charged with a Class E felony just for carrying out the word of God. And
it's crazy. I mean, again, I'm Jewish. I'm not Christian. I'm not going to try to speak with any authority on what's in the Bible or the teachings of Jesus. But it does seem to me that one of the themes that I've come to understand is to take care of the poor, take care of the stranger. And if churches are doing that, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. To go after them for that, it's wild. So the two big anti-immigration pushes, I mean, there were more that happened in the special session, but this session were to go after children in schools and to go after churches and charities for helping people. Like, where are the Bible verses that back that up? Because I haven't seen them. And I just don't understand how you can justify that. How you can be so hateful. I don't get it. And I don't think I'm alone. So, and then Ali says, and also him signing on to the letter to Governor Lee to veto the Republican passed IVF bill. Yeah, that's the one I was going to end with here. I'm going to go back to that in a second. Most Republican values are at odds with the church. It's hard to argue that with what they're doing right now. We hold our breath every session in Kentucky with convergence therapy. Roger says this is how the GOP governs. Yeah. I mean, Chris Todd's an angry dude. He really is. And by the way, the bill was carried in the Senate by Brent Taylor. And, you know, I'm sure they've got some logic in their brain about how that's justified. But, you know, like with most of their bills, and this is what I encourage you to keep in mind, it's not about what's in the bill itself always. You know, like if you could go into the particulars of the bill, like maybe they could find a way to justify it. But what it's really about is a chilling effect. That's the case with education. That's the case with, you know, book stuff. That's the case with, you know, drag ban, all this stuff. It's about like you're putting people in this position where I don't know. Is this legal? I don't know. So I'm just not going to do it. It's a chilling effect. So, you know, if you're a church or a charity out there and you're like, I want to help immigrants, I'm not going to do it in Tennessee. Like, is that legal? I don't know. They don't even seem to know half the time what's in their bills. I mean, look at Senator Briggs and, you know, the abortion bill that they carried. Like, they didn't even know what was in it. They had to go back and try to fix it, and they still haven't really. So they don't know what's in their bills half the time. The point is the chilling effect. That's the point. And so that's the point with this bill too, the chilling effect that it's going to have on charities, on churches. And people are going to go without shelter and they're not going to get help because of stuff like that. Now, I just want to end by talking about what Ali brought up. Also, Mayberry, signing on the letter to Governor Lee to veto Republican passed IVF and contraceptives bill while he has 2 daughters at home. Yes. So what she's talking about is there was a bill by Republican Representative Iris Rudder to essentially codify the right to IVF and contraceptives in Tennessee. Again, Rudder's a Republican. Democrats did not speak on this bill. They were just like, we're going to let Republicans handle this one. Johnny Garrett spoke passionately in favor of this bill. Apparently his middle daughter was I'm not a doctor, I don't know the words, but born through IVF. IVF helped them with their, Ali, help me out here. What am I trying to say? Anyway, you get it. During that bill, Gino Bolso stood up and said, this is bad. Chris Todd stood up and said, this is bad. What Gino actually conceived, thank you, Ali. What Gino actually said was basically that anybody who votes for that bill is not pro-life, you know, because of their notion that life begins at conception and, you know, their ideas of, you know, what happens to the embryos that don't get used, that are disposed of, you know, their ideas of what contraception actually means, which Jody Barrett was very confused by. And basically what he was saying was the only real pro-life position is to be against IVF and against contraceptives. And by saying that, they're proving exactly why Iris Rudder's bill was needed, to protect those rights from these people. And as if to underscore that point, after the bill was passed through the House, through the Senate, it's now heading to Governor Lee's desk. I don't know what he's going to do, but 11 House Republicans sent Governor Lee a letter saying, please veto this bill. Again, Chris Todd stood up and said, this bill's not necessary. And now he's showing exactly why it's necessary, asking Lee to veto this bill so that they can down the line attack these very things. I mean, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to connect these dots here. Right. And then Jody Barrett thinking Plan B isn't important. Yeah, Jody Barrett, who even after Brian Terry, also Republican, a doctor, explained to him what Plan B does, where it doesn't allow the pregnancy to start. Jody Barrett insists that he's right. And Brian Terry, a doctor, is wrong. This is the arrogance of these people who are in control of so much of our lives in a very frightening way. And then yesterday, I was looking for one. It could have been any of them, but I just really wanted to talk to any of the 11 Republicans who signed onto that letter asked Governor Lee to veto a Republican bill to protect IVF and contraceptives. And I found this guy, Brock Martin, who I've never really talked to before, but I didn't really think was one of like the more extreme. I could be wrong about this. I just haven't found him to be like one of the fire breathing extremists up there. So to see him on that letter, I was like, oh, well, maybe he is. I don't know. And so I went up to him and I said, aren't you guys just proving this point?
Aren't you guys showing why that bill is needed by sending that letter?
What's
For
that?
him to veto that bill? Aren't you showing exactly why the bill is needed? Aren't you guys the reason that bill is needed?
What's that?
Sending that letter to get him to veto the bill? Doesn't that show exactly why the bill is needed?
What's the reasoning for that?
To protect IVF and contraceptives?
Yeah, I believe in that. That's what we're doing, allowing that to happen.
Didn't
but
you
it's also
send a
protecting
letter
life.
to get him to veto it?
But protecting the life is still an important aspect.
Why, if you believe in it, why are you trying to get him to veto a bill that protects it by a Republican?
I don't know,
How does
man.
that make
I don't know, man. I don't know, man. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm speechless. I don't know, man. Imagine that. Imagine signing on to a letter asking Governor Lee to veto something that so obviously helps so many people. And then someone asks you why. You're just like, bah, I don't know. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you? And that wasn't the only time he said, I don't know. He said, I don't know 4 times.
make any sense? You seem confused.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're saying you want to protect something that you're trying to block protections for. How does that make sense?
I don't know, man. That's how
You
those
don't
rules
know?
work sometimes.
You signed the letter.
That's how those laws work sometimes.
no.
We don't want to open up doors.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, man. It's just how those laws work sometimes. What the fuck does that mean? Sorry for cursing, but my God. I mean, like, how do you end up in that position where you're doing something so impactful and you don't know why? Like, you haven't put any thought into this? And that went on for another 90 seconds of me asking him the same thing over and over, basically. And you can see it on our feeds. I posted it today. But it never got any better than that. It got to the point where he's like, this isn't the place to have this conversation, as though like there's another place. Like, where we're going to go hang out? Like, well, we're going to have a beer? Like, no. This is the place. You're in the legislature. You're a legislator. You sent the letter to the governor, who was one floor below us. Like, this is exactly the place to have that conversation. And you should be ready to have that conversation. And you weren't. And either it's because you don't like your answers or you don't have your answer, but there's no good answer for why you were that unprepared for that conversation in that moment, Brock Martin. And I don't know a lot of people in Huntington, Carroll County, Henderson County, and I think Gibson County. But if you do, please send them that clip and show them what their legislator is up to, because that's kind of the point of all of this, you know, letting Clarksville and Montgomery County know what Aaron Mayberry is up to in their name, letting Carroll, Gibson, Henderson County know what Brock Martin is up to in their name. That's what we're just trying to let you guys know. What you do with that is kind of up to you, but man, it's crazy sometimes up there how unprepared and unbelievably ignorant they seem to be when they're doing such remarkably impactful things every day. And like you sit up there, I encourage everybody to come up there. A lot of people are up there every day and appreciate them very much. Your presence matters. But if you haven't been up there, I really encourage you to go up there and just like go sit in the balcony. Not even like, yes, on the big protest days when there's a big bill, but especially on the days when there's like not a huge bill. And you just see them like casually just flicking the button, and it's like a locker room up there, and they're eating while they're like stripping women's rights, and they don't even know what they're voting on half the time. And it's crazy. Because honestly, the state level is like where your rights really disappear. And it's happening so casually. That's like the shocking part, is how casual it all is, how easy it is. So anyway, I'm glad it's adjourned. I'm glad it's over. I'll be doing more live streams now that session's over, because more of my attention will be on other things. But I appreciate you all very much for the support, for being here. Appreciate all the people that showed up to fight against that gross bill attacking undocumented kids. And keep following the holler, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.